Hello YouTubers, this is Average Joe here. We're back for another video. We got Winter Storm Maya. It is pounding the northeast, as you can see. Really heavy, dense snow here to move, so we're going to give that a try. I'm going to get my truck out of the way and we're going to give it a try with the Kubota again. Had a lot of good viewer feedback with my Kubota. Unfortunately, obviously, since the last video I haven't had time to really add any weight or to get tire chains, but I did notice that the tires were a little low on pressure. Not sure if that will make a difference or not, but I'm hoping that it does. We're going to give it a try and see if we can get this snow cleared off of here before it gets much deeper. So let's get the truck moved. Okay, so there's a couple things I'm going to do differently this time, and the first thing I'm going to mention is you're going to notice that I'm going to plow in high range, and I'm going to plow at almost pedal to the metal, full throttle, just to try to keep the snow rolling, which actually was one of the suggestions of a YouTuber, and I appreciate that. I think one of my problems might be that I am not plowing fast enough. So you're going to notice that as I'm plowing, that because I have a much higher rate of speed, the snow seems to be rolling much better, and once you can keep the snow rolling in front of you, it has less of a tendency to basically bog you down and get you to a crawling stop where you might end up being stuck. So you can see it's rolling off the front end there very nicely. So that's not really an issue. The other thing I want to mention to you in advance is that as we move through the video, you are going to see that the lens gets a little bit clouded with the snow and the sleet that's coming down. I'm going to apologize about that in advance. I didn't realize it was going to do that to my lens so quickly. But the next thing I'm going to do then is just keep taking passes with the blade in a straight position to try to knock off some of the deeper stuff. I don't mind angling, and a lot of people have been commenting, well, why aren't you angling the blade? And the reason why I'm not angling the blade is because I prefer not to push the snow off to the sides of my driveway. It just gets to be a real nuisance that way. I prefer to push everything to the end. So that's why I rarely angle the blade unless it's to just bring out whatever's on the edges and bring that to the center. I realize that lack of angling is creating a little bit of a trail of snow. But as you can see with the blade in the straight position, it is just powering through this deep snow. And I mean, this is one of the deepest, heaviest snows that we've had yet. And I know I said that the last video, but this is just extremely heavy. Notice once again that I do have my headlights on. I also have my four-ways on. One thing about this storm is that typically I wait until the end of the storm to plow, but this was just coming down so heavily, and it was projected in the forecast to continue for almost a 24-hour period, that I decided to get out there and start getting after it. And I know that that in and of itself does have an impact. The other thing that I had a lot of comments on previously was about the back dragging, and we're going to be getting to the back dragging portion of the video here momentarily. But a few people had commented, use your blade in the float position when you back drag. You want to keep in mind several things. First of all, because I have my skid shoes set down, that makes my blade go up. And I've already explained in the past that with having the blade up an inch or so, that's because of my driveway being so uneven, and I have patches or areas of concrete pads that are heaved, areas that are in worse shape than others where it's slightly sunken down. So I guess what I'm getting at is that when it comes to the back dragging, you'll notice sometimes that I do get the front end all the way up in the air, and that's not always my intent, but I need the down pressure, and I also need that front of that blade to kind of arc forward slightly. Because of the fact that I have those skid shoes set down, the only way that's going to arc forward enough to get full contact with the concrete is for me to actually bring the front end of the tractor up some. Now I try to be careful with that. Obviously I'm not doing that the entire time, but that's one disadvantage to having the skid shoes set down so far, but I just can't get around that. I am currently in the process of checking on different options in terms of a rubber cutting edge. There's some other YouTubers out there that have made that suggestion as well, and I am looking into that. I'm thinking about maybe getting a chunk of mine belt and maybe making something out of that. I don't know that that's something that I'm going to get done before the end of this winter season, but rather maybe make that a summer project. So rest assured, if I get to doing that whenever that time comes, I'll definitely make a video of it for everyone to see what I'm coming up with there. The other thing that I want to mention to you, and I mentioned this briefly at the beginning of the video in the wind and in all the background noise there, was the fact that I actually found that my tire pressures were low. I realized that my back tires were about 2.5 psi below what they should have been. I realized that the front tires were about 4 psi below what they should have been. And I can tell you that I've noticed an increase in traction just by increasing that tire pressure. Now obviously there's a lot of factors. The number one factor is just the temperature change. We just came off of a very, very cold spurt. I mean, we're talking like -5, -10, and that wasn't even with the wind chill. So that's definitely one of those things where I need to be more mindful of that. But I'm thinking with the turf tires, I've heard a lot of comments about how the side treads on the turf tires is actually better in the snow than the industrial tires. And realistically, I can believe that after hearing those comments and thinking about it more. And along those lines, I'm wondering if having the air pressure at the correct amount is also helping me get that side tread to be fully active in the process. Obviously, if the tires are not fully inflated, then I'm probably not taking advantage of the way they were designed to give me the optimal traction, of course. So as I said, here's the back dragging part of it. And there's just such a high volume of snow there, you can see. That's one of those things where that is the disadvantage to having those skid shoes down so far and bringing the blade up, is that when you back drag, you do get a trail there. And I also want to make sure I mention to you, you're going to notice that I am not pushing any snow to what is closest to the bottom of the video, so basically to the left of that left-hand garage bay. And that's because there's actually a paver walkway there, so I have to be very careful with the blade even when I make that turn, that I don't catch the edge of one of the pavers, because obviously with the strength of the blade and the tractor, I'm confident that I would probably rip up those pavers. So I actually use a small Toro single stage snow thrower to clear that when possible. Now if it's not possible because of a deep snow like this, then I'll break out the Honda 2-stage, and I'll just make sure that I have it set in the higher position, and that way I can clear the bulk of the snow. But when it comes to getting down to the very bare pavers, that's whenever I use that single stage that has the belt in there, of course. That just is much more gentle on the pavers, and it keeps me from scuffing them or making marks on them. So you can see here that I'm doing a lot with this. This took me a little longer than usual. Again, some of it is just experimenting with different ways. There I have my tires up a little bit too far. And again, it does come down to the controls and getting used to the machine. I really value the feedback that everybody's been giving me. There's many of you out here who perhaps even run this type of equipment all day long or run heavier equipment all day long. I am just the novice. I'm the weekend warrior, so to speak. And it varies from year to year because when we get a ton of snow, I may be out there sometimes 2 and 3 times a week. Other times we don't get any type of significant snowfall, but once every 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes we may go for a month or more without any significant plowable snow. So I also see there's a learning curve with that as well, and that is the more that I use it, obviously the better that it gets, and the easier it is, and the more control I have. The other thing I want to mention to you briefly is I'm also thinking about getting a small push box for the front and using that with my loader. The disadvantage of the loader, obviously, with the push box is that you can't really angle it. But with the push box, I'm starting to wonder if that wouldn't be better for me because it would help me to contain the snow as I'm moving down the driveway and kind of clean things up since I primarily am using my blade in the straight position. So I'm interested to hear any thoughts on the push box for the front, maybe what size you would recommend. I did see some advertised. Messick's, I'm sure that you've heard of their YouTube channel if you're watching this one. That's a Kubota dealer that is a little bit away from me because I'm here in Cresson, Pennsylvania, and the other branch that I see that they have is Elizabethtown. Maybe one of their other branches is perhaps closer, but I am thinking about looking into that as well. So if you like this video, make sure that you click the like button below and make sure that you subscribe to see more content. Thank you.